Brandon's lawyer slid the bank statements onto Judge Morales's bench. $890,000. He tapped the highlighted figure, transferred, while Mr. Russo was grieving his dying wife. I set Maria's green ledger on the table, my calloused hands steady despite the accusation still hanging in the air. 40 years of entries in purple ink, 1984 to 2022, every receipt carbon copied. Then, Angela opened the medical file, her laser pointer highlighting each date on the courtroom screen. "Hospice records," she said. "Mrs. Russo was unconscious during every date your client claims she made transfers." Judge Morales removed her glasses slowly, her face draining of color as she looked from the medical records to the timeline on screen. Brandon's lawyer leaned close, shuffling papers while whispering. Brandon's jaw clenched, one hand adjusting his designer glasses. "Take a second to subscribe, then watch how this revenge plays out." The judge called a recess. I sat there staring at Maria's ledger, remembering how it all started. I started Russo and Kellerman Auto Repair in March of 1984 with $12,000. $6,000 from me, $6,000 from Pete. The corner lot came up for lease on a Tuesday. We signed on Friday, opened the doors the following Monday. Maria kept the books from day one. She set up her desk in the corner office while Pete and I were still bolting down the hydraulic lifts. Bought herself a green marbled ledger at the stationery store, lined up 3 purple Papermate pens in the pencil cup, and wrote the date across the top of the first page in her neat block letters. March 3rd, 1984. Every transaction after that went into those books. Customer name, service performed, parts cost, labor charge, payment method. She'd write it in purple ink, tear off the yellow carbon copy for the customer, file the pink copy in chronological order. Then she'd reconcile everything against the bank deposits at the end of each month. 3-way verification, she called it. Ledger, receipt, bank statement. March 15th, 1984. Mrs. Kowalski. Oil change and filter. Parts $8.50. Labor $12. Total $20.50. Cash. Maria wrote it in the ledger, tore off the yellow carbon for Mrs. Kowalski, filed the pink copy. That night, she matched all 3 against the $20.50 in the register. If the numbers didn't match, she'd stay at that desk until 2 in the morning, finding the discrepancy. Pete understood what we were building. He'd finish explaining a brake job to Mrs. Kowalski and walk her out to her Buick, pointing at the rotors that could wait another 6 months versus the pads that needed replacing now. She'd thank him, pay for just the pads, and come back in September for the rotors. "We ain't building cars, Eddie," he told me once while we were cleaning up after closing. "We're building trust." He was right. Danny Kowalski brought his first truck to us in 1986 because his father told him to. Brought his son's first car in 2004 for the same reason. That's what honest work gets you. Families. The neighborhood ran on handshake deals back then. Old man Kowalski paid in cash every time, counted out bills from a coffee can he kept under his workbench. No receipt needed. His word was good. The corner deli knew your sandwich order before you walked in. The Union Hall had your father's name on a plaque from 1952. Contracts were something lawyers used. We used our word. Maria's ledgers documented 40 years of that world. Every oil change, every transmission rebuild, every time we told someone their car wasn't worth fixing and helped them find a decent used replacement instead. The green books stacked up in the filing cabinets, one for each year, labeled in her handwriting. She reconciled March 1989 from her hospital bed 2 days after delivering Isabel, our daughter sleeping in the bassinet beside her. She reconciled August 1993, the week after her mother died. She reconciled the bad years when the shop barely broke even and we were eating pasta 4 nights a week. The coffee stains on her desk are from those nights. She'd make a cup, set it down. 2 hours later, the mug would still be full, coffee cold, film forming on top. She'd dump it, make another, forget it again. Pete died 6 years ago. Heart attack while shoveling the shop parking lot in January. Dropped the shovel and was gone before the ambulance arrived. Brandon showed up for the funeral in a charcoal suit with surgeon's cuffs, Italian leather shoes that had never seen snow. He checked his phone during the service, left before the reception ended. We buried Pete on a Thursday. Brandon drove back to Boston on Friday. I hadn't seen him again until he showed up at the shop 3 months ago. Pete's will left him 50% of the shop. Partnership agreement from 1984 said heirs inherit the stake, but the surviving partner approves any operational changes. I figured Brandon would sell me his half when he needed the money or got tired of the paperwork. He never called, never wrote, just disappeared. Maria died 3 years ago this past January. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in March of 2021, gone by January of 2022. She kept the books current until 3 days before her final hospitalization. I have the last ledger in the basement. Her handwriting changed toward the end, the purple ink wavering where her hands trembled, numbers sometimes written twice when the first attempt came out illegible. But the columns still balanced. She reconciled the December deposits from her hospice bed, Isabel holding the calculator while Maria called out the numbers. The filing cabinets hold 40 years of ledgers in chronological order, carbon copy receipt books stacked in matching boxes, everything labeled in her block letters. I haven't moved anything. I can't bring myself to change anything. The coffee-stained adding machine still sits on her desk. The pencil cup still holds purple Papermate pens, the same brand she used since 1984. I buy new ones when the old ones run out. Keep the cup full like she always did. The shop runs on autopilot now. I fix the cars, make the deposits, pay the bills. Just keeping Maria's desk how she left it. Purple pens in the cup, coffee stain on the adding machine. 40 years of honest work in green marbled books. I looked up from the ledger. The judge was returning to the bench. Angela stood, ready to present the hospice timeline. Brandon's certified letter arrived on a Tuesday in March, 3 years after Maria's death. Partnership review meeting requested. Call to schedule. I called Danny Kowalski that afternoon while he was on break. I wanted to ask if he'd heard from Brandon, but Danny cut me off before I could explain. "You notice what's happening to the neighborhood?" he asked. "What do you mean?" 23 properties sold in 6 months, Danny said. All to LLCs nobody's heard of. They're offering 20% over asking to old folks who've lived here 40 years. Mrs. Kowalski's neighbor took the deal last week. House sold for $200,000 when it's worth maybe $160,000. I looked out the shop window at the corner deli where I'd bought coffee since 1984. A construction permit hung in the window. Coming soon, Artisan coffee and provisions. "When did that happen?" I asked. 2 weeks ago, Danny said. "You didn't notice?" Brandon showed up Thursday morning in a charcoal suit and Italian leather shoes, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. He stood in the shop office, looking at Maria's desk like it was a museum exhibit. "We should talk about the business," he said, setting his briefcase on the small table near the filing cabinets. I sat across from him in my work clothes, oil still under my fingernails from the transmission job I'd been finishing. "The property's in a prime location," Brandon said. "The neighborhood's experiencing demographic transition. I've been reviewing the financials, and I think we need to discuss highest and best use scenarios." "The shop's doing fine," I said. Brandon pulled out a folder. He opened it to show me printouts with charts and numbers. "The 2019 rezoning put this property at $3.2 million," he said. "We're operating a business that generates maybe $80,000 annual profit on an asset worth 40 times that. That's inefficient capital allocation. Your dad and I built this shop," I said. "We're not selling." "Eddie, you're 68 years old." Brandon leaned back in his chair. "You've given 40 years to this place. Don't you think it's time to retire? Let me unlock the property's potential. You could live very comfortably on your share. The partnership agreement requires mutual consent for any sale or dissolution," I said. "Pete and I signed it in 1984. I'm not interested in selling." Brandon's expression shifted. The condescending patience disappeared. "My father wasted his life in this shop," he said. 40 years of small thinking, 40 years of failure. And you want to do the same thing? People trusted him enough to come back for 40 years, I said. "That's not failure. Trust doesn't pay dividends," Brandon said. He stood up, closing his briefcase. "I'm trying to help you see the bigger picture here. But if you want to stay stuck in the past, that's your choice." He walked to the door, then turned back. "I'll be reviewing the books more carefully," he said, "making sure everything's in order. Sometimes old-fashioned bookkeeping hides problems people don't want to see." He left without shaking my hand. The legal notice arrived 2 weeks later. Formal accusation of embezzlement. Maria Russo systematically transferred $890,000 from partnership accounts to personal holdings during the period of March 2021 through December 2021. Emergency dissolution hearing requested. Buyout demanded at corrected valuation, accounting for alleged theft. I read it 3 times in the shop office, Maria's purple pens still in the pencil cup on her desk, her coffee stain still on the adding machine. Brandon was calling my wife a He was saying she'd stolen from the business while dying of cancer, that 40 years of honest bookkeeping had been a cover for fraud, that everything she'd built deserved to be erased so he could turn our shop into luxury condos. I set the notice on Maria's desk. My hands didn't shake. They should have. I looked at the filing cabinets holding 40 years of her ledgers. Green marble books stacked in chronological order. Every transaction documented in purple ink. Every receipt carbon copied and filed. Brandon thought he could destroy her reputation because she wasn't here to defend herself. I opened the first filing cabinet, pulled out the 1984 ledger, set it on the table next to his legal notice. 40 years of her handwriting. He thought he could erase that. He was wrong. That evening, Isabel came to the shop. The letter crumpled in her grip, her eyes red. "Dad," she said, "you need to see this." I'd already read it that morning. Brandon's accusation. 8 pages of corporate letterhead claiming Maria had stolen $890,000 while dying of cancer. But I took it from Isabel anyway. watched her sit in the customer chair across from Maria's desk. "This is impossible," I said. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What if it's not? Your mother kept every receipt since 1984, reconciled the accounts monthly, filed taxes perfectly for 40 years without a single discrepancy." Isabel picked up one of the fabricated bank statements Brandon's lawyers had included. The dates ran from March through December 2021, Maria's final year. "What if she made mistakes during the chemo?" Isabel said. $890,000, Dad. That's not a small mistake. What if the chemo made her confused and she never told us? Something cold settled in my chest. "Your mother kept the books current until 3 days before her final hospitalization," I said. "You were there. You held the calculator while she called out the December numbers from her hospice bed." "I know," Isabel said, "but what if there's something we missed? What if Brandon's right and we just don't want to see it?" I stood and walked to the filing cabinets holding 40 years of ledgers. Pulled out the 2021 book. The metal drawer scraped open, smelling like old paper and Maria's coffee. Set it on the desk between us. "Your mother's handwriting is in here," I said. "Every transaction documented in purple ink. Every receipt carbon copied and filed. You think she was stealing while dying of cancer?" Isabel wiped her eyes again. "I don't know what to think anymore," she said. Danny Kowalski showed up at the shop the next morning, his union jacket zipped against the March cold. He'd seen the business blog interview Brandon had given. "You read what that bastard said about Maria?" Danny asked. I'd read it. Brandon sitting in what looked like a corporate office, performing reluctant sorrow for the camera, talking about discovering systematic fraud in his father's business, calling himself a whistleblower, protecting Pete's legacy from his partner's dishonest widow, never using Maria's name, just referring to her as my father's partner's widow. The blog's comments section divided the neighborhood. Danny and the old customers defending Maria's character. Younger neighbors who'd never known her wondering if old-fashioned bookkeeping had hidden problems. "She kept honest books for 40 years, Danny said. "Everybody knows that. Brandon's got lawyers and bank statements," I said. "What do I have? Green ledgers and carbon copies?" "You've got the truth," Danny said. I sat at Maria's desk in the basement that night. The filing cabinets lined the walls, each labeled by year in her block lettering. The work table held her adding machine still plugged in, her purple pens in a coffee mug. Boxes of carbon copy receipt books stacked in chronological order. The room smelled like old paper and her coffee. I kept a can of her brand down here even though I didn't drink it. Photos of Isabel's childhood were taped to the file cabinets. Maria working at this same desk while a young Isabel did homework beside her. I pulled out the 1984 ledger. The first entry in Maria's handwriting. March 3rd, 1984. Mrs. Kowalski. Oil change and filter. $20.50. Cash. 40 years of entries after that. 40 years of her life documented in purple ink. Brandon had bank statements. Corporate lawyers. 890,000 reasons to doubt. And I had green ledgers and carbon copies. I sat in Maria's basement office until past 10. Isabel's call came as I was closing the 1984 ledger. "Dad," she said, "maybe you should consider settling. Avoid dragging Mom's name through court. Just take whatever Brandon offers and walk away." I looked at the ledgers stacked in the filing cabinets. Maria's life's work. That feels like giving up on her, I said. Silence on the line. Traffic sounds in the background. It feels like protecting you, Isabel said finally. I can't watch you lose everything fighting a battle you might not win. I hung up and sat in Maria's chair, touching the coffee stain on her desk. 40 years of honest work in green marbled books. Maybe that was all it would ever be. A memory no one else would believe. 2 days after Isabel's call, Danny showed up at the shop. Late March cold had him zipping his union jacket tight. He set a business card on Maria's desk. Angela Chen, the card read, forensic accounting and estate investigation. She specializes in elder fraud, Danny said, cases where corporate types go after working families. My cousin used her when his mother's estate got targeted by a developer. She doesn't lose. I picked up the card. The address was in Center City, professional district near the courthouse. What's she gonna cost? Danny shrugged. Call her. She works different for different people. But Eddie, you need someone who understands what Brandon's doing. This isn't just about the shop anymore. My truck's parked across from your shop most days. Security camera runs all the time. Might have caught something. I called that afternoon. Angela's voice was crisp, professional. She asked 3 questions. How long had Maria kept the books? Where were the original ledgers stored? Had I touched anything since Brandon's accusation? 40 years, I said. Basement office. Filing cabinets along the walls. I haven't touched anything since she died. I'll be there Monday at 9, she said. Angela Chen arrived in a gray pantsuit carrying 2 leather briefcases, a laptop bag, and a portable scanner. She was maybe 55, Chinese-American, with short practical hair and rectangular glasses. She shook my hand once, firm grip, then walked straight to the basement stairs. Show me the office, she said. I led her down. The filing cabinets lined the walls, Maria's work table in the center, boxes of carbon copy receipt books stacked in chronological order. Angela set her briefcases on the table. She pulled out a yellow legal pad, 3 different colored pens, and a laptop. I'm going to be here for a while, she said. Weeks, probably. I need to cross-reference 40 years of ledgers against bank statements, tax returns, vendor invoices. Every transaction Brandon claims happened, I need to prove didn't. She opened the first filing cabinet, pulled out the 1984 ledger, set it on the table beside her laptop. Your wife had a gift, Eddie. Most people, their records are chaos. You dig through everything to find one receipt. Maria's books, every transaction exactly where it should be. Labeled, dated, cross-referenced, Angela worked methodically. She'd pull a ledger, photograph each entry with her phone, upload to her laptop, cross-reference it against the corresponding bank statement, mark discrepancies with colored sticky notes. Green meant match. Yellow meant needs verification. Red meant problem. 2.5 weeks went by. Angela turned the basement office into investigation headquarters. Her color-coded binders covered the work table. Green for ledgers, blue for bank statements, red for medical records, yellow for tax returns. She found the pattern on day 18. Eddie, she called up the stairs. You need to see this. I came down. Angela had Maria's 2021 medical records spread across the table beside Brandon's fabricated bank statement. Look at the dates, she said. March 14th, 2021. Brandon claims Maria transferred $50,000 that day, but here's her hospital admission record. Jefferson Hospital, chemotherapy treatment. 14-hour IV drip. She was unconscious most of that day. Angela pulled up a timeline on her laptop screen. Red markers for Maria's chemo appointments. Black markers for Brandon's accusation dates. Perfect overlap, she said. Every single transfer Brandon claimed she made happened while she was either hospitalized or too weak to leave hospice. The math doesn't just fail, it's impossible. She opened another folder, Shell Company Registrations. 6 LLCs, all registered to Brandon's Boston address. Heritage Automotive Holdings, LLC, she said, tapping one registration. Delaware registration. Registered agent, CT Corporation. Brandon's Boston address as principal office. Filed March 10, 2021, 4 days before Maria's first chemo treatment. 1 week before the first transfer he claims she made. Angela looked at me over her glasses. He planned this while she was dying, she said. Set up the shell companies, waited for her to be incapacitated, then fabricated the evidence. He needed physical access to your shop records to make it look convincing. Brandon's visits during Maria's illness. The Mercedes in the parking lot. The file boxes. Danny might have something, I said. Danny reviewed his dashcam footage that evening. Found 4 visits. March 18th, April 22nd, June 14th, August 3rd. All dates when Maria was hospitalized, and I was at Jefferson with her. The timestamps showed Brandon entering through the office door with a key, 30 to 45 minutes inside each visit, leaving with cardboard file boxes on 2 occasions. Angela added the footage to her evidence binders. He documented his own fraud, she said. Every piece of evidence he created to frame Maria actually proves his scheme instead. She closed her laptop 3 weeks after she started. Her forensic report was 200 pages. Timeline analysis, handwriting verification, deposit reconciliation, shell company network mapping, medical impossibility documentation. The carbon copy system is superior evidence, she told me. Physical artifacts that can't be altered after the fact. Brandon assumed old-fashioned meant vulnerable. He was wrong. I looked at Maria's ledger stacked on the table. 40 years of purple ink entries. Her coffee-stained adding machine. Her purple Papermate pens in the cup. Angela packed her briefcases. "We're ready for court," she said. Brandon's lawyer stood at the defense table, his tailored suit reflecting the fluorescent light as he clicked to the next PowerPoint slide. $890,000, he said, tapping the projection screen. Systematic transfers over 18 months while Mr. Russo grieved his dying wife. The courtroom screen showed fabricated bank statements, highlighted figures, corporate graphics designed to overwhelm. Brandon sat beside his lawyer in charcoal wool and French cuffs, hands folded on the table, fingers interlaced, thumbs tapping a slow rhythm. Judge Morales made notes behind her bench, reading glasses reflecting the screen's glow. The lawyer clicked through more slides. Fiduciary duty violations. Breach of partnership trust. The deceased partner's widow exploiting her bookkeeping position during terminal illness. I sat at the plaintiff's table in my Navy funeral suit, the same one I'd worn to Maria's service 3 years ago. My calloused hands rested on the table beside Angela Chen's 3-inch evidence binder. Brandon took the stand when his lawyer finished. He adjusted his designer glasses, cleared his throat. "This is difficult for me," he said. "My father trusted Eddie and his wife for 40 years. Discovering that Mrs. Russo had betrayed that trust." He paused, adjusted his glasses. "I never wanted to believe it. His voice caught on the right words, paused at the right moments. Performance perfect. He looked at Judge Morales, not at me. I just want to protect my father's legacy, he said. Make sure his life's work isn't tainted by what happened. The gallery murmured. Danny Kowalski sat in the front row wearing his union jacket, arms crossed. Isabel sat beside him, hands clasped tight in her lap. Brandon returned to the defense table. Angela stood, opening her binder. Your Honor, she said, I'd like to present the actual evidence. The screen changed. Maria's 1984 ledger appeared, her purple ink handwriting filling the columns. March 3, 1984, Mrs. Kowalski. Oil change and filter, $20.50. Cash. Angela used her laser pointer. Mrs. Russo maintained these ledgers for 40 years, she said. Every transaction documented. Every receipt carbon copied. Every entry reconciled against bank deposits monthly. She clicked through pages. 1985, 1990, 1995, 2000. Maria's handwriting consistent across decades, the purple ink entries matching bank statements exactly. Not a single discrepancy in 40 years, Angela said. Not one unexplained transaction. Brandon's lawyer leaned close to him, whispering. Brandon's jaw tightened. Angela clicked to medical records. Jefferson Hospital admission forms appeared on screen, Maria's name at the top. March 14, 2021, Angela said. Mr. Kellerman claims Mrs. Russo transferred $50,000 that day. But hospital records show she was admitted for chemotherapy, 14-hour IV treatment. She was unconscious most of that day. The screen split. Medical records on the left, Brandon's accusation dates on the right. April 22nd, Angela said. Another alleged transfer. Mrs. Russo was hospitalized for complications from treatment. She clicked through more dates. June 14th, August 3rd, December 20th. Every date Mr. Kellerman claims Mrs. Russo made transfers. She was either hospitalized or in hospice care, Angela said. The medical timeline makes his accusations impossible. Judge Morales removed her glasses slowly. Her face went pale as she studied the screen. Angela pulled up the timeline visualization. Red markers for Maria's chemo appointments, taken from her calendar where she'd marked them in red pen. Black markers for Brandon's accusation dates. Complete overlap, Angela said. Mrs. Russo was physically incapable of making these transfers. She clicked to dash cam footage. Danny's truck camera showing Brandon's Mercedes in the shop parking lot, timestamp visible. March 18, 2021, Angela said. Mr. Kellerman's vehicle at the shop. Mrs. Russo was hospitalized. Mr. Russo was at Jefferson Hospital with her. More footage appeared. April 22nd, June 14th, August 3rd. Brandon entering through the office door, leaving 30 minutes later with file boxes. Mr. Kellerman had physical access to shop records during Mrs. Russo's hospitalizations, Angela said. She clicked to LLC registrations. Heritage Automotive Holdings appeared on screen, Brandon's signature on the filing. This company was registered March 10, 2021, Angela said, 4 days before Mrs. Russo's first chemotherapy. 1 week before the first transfer Mr. Kellerman claims she made. Judge Morales leaned forward. Mr. Kellerman, she said, can you explain why you registered this LLC the same week Mrs. Russo began chemotherapy? Brandon's hands gripped the table edge. His jaw worked. He stammered. That's just coincidence. Legitimate business planning. The gallery erupted. Voices overlapped, chair legs scraped. The court reporter's fingers froze over her keys. Danny's voice cut through. Bullshit. Judge Morales raised her hand for silence. Brandon's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we request a recess to review this new evidence. Isabel gripped my hand. Her nails pressed into my palm. Tears streamed down her face as she stared at the screen showing her mother's chemo dates aligned with Brandon's lies. The timeline made it undeniable. Maria had been dying while Brandon planned his fraud. Judge Morales studied the evidence on screen. Her mouth set in a thin line. Recess granted, she said. 15 minutes. But her eyes fixed on Brandon, and I knew she'd already seen the truth. After the 15-minute recess, Judge Morales returned to the bench. Her expression hardened. The court reporter's fingers froze over her keys. Judge Morales set her glasses on the bench, the click of plastic on wood cutting through the silence. Mr. Kellerman, she said, remained standing. Brandon's hands flattened against the table. The wood creaked under his palms. 4 visits during Mrs. Russo's hospitalizations, Judge Morales said. Shell Company registered 1 week before the first alleged transfer. Explain that timing, Mr. Kellerman. Brandon's jaw worked. Your Honor, that was legitimate business planning. Unrelated to. Judge Morales raised her hand. Stop. I've reviewed Mrs. Chen's forensic analysis. Mrs. Russo's ledgers show 40 years of perfect reconciliation, not a single unexplained transaction. Your accusations claim she transferred $890,000 while unconscious in hospice care. The medical timeline makes your story impossible. She picked up Angela's binder. These accusations were made in bad faith with intent to defraud Mr. Russo of his property rights. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff. Someone in the gallery laughed. Another voice. That's what you get. Chair legs scraped. The bailiff moved toward the railing. Judge Morales waited for silence. Mr. Russo is awarded 100% partnership control. Mr. Kellerman, you will pay Mr. Russo's legal fees in the amount of $47,000 plus damages for defamation of Mrs. Russo's estate. Brandon's knuckles went white against the table edge. Furthermore, Judge Morales said, I'm forwarding this case file to the Philadelphia District Attorney for investigation of potential criminal fraud. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Isabel grabbed my hand, her grip tight enough to hurt. Dad, she whispered, Mom's name is cleared. Maria's ledger sat on the table between us. 40 years of purple ink. Every transaction exactly where it should be. The following day, Angela forwarded me an email from the DA's office. The subject line read, Heritage Automotive Holdings, LLC, criminal investigation opened. Brandon Shell Company bank accounts are frozen pending the fraud investigation, Angela wrote in her message. All 23 property purchases fell through when sellers learned about the criminal probe. His Boston condos in foreclosure. Can't make payments without his Meridian salary. I sat at the shop, oil still under my fingernails from the morning's brake job. The filing cabinets lined the wall behind me, Maria's purple pen still in the cup on her desk. Danny brought me the article at noon. Meridian Properties terminates senior developer. The corporate statement took up 2 paragraphs. Individual employees' unauthorized activities. Company had no knowledge, full cooperation with authorities. They threw him under the bus in 48 hours, Danny said. Corporate loyalty. Brandon's ex-wife filed for custody modification the same week. Danny showed me that article too. Moral character concerns cited. The fraud investigation mentioned specifically. She was requesting supervised visitation only. The business blog that had published Brandon's interview ran a correction. Full apology. New headline. Local developer accused of fraud against dying woman's estate. Brandon's photo under it. Details of the criminal investigation. The comment section turned completely. I drove home and sat in Maria's basement office, reading the articles Danny had sent. The filing cabinets held her ledgers. Purple pens in the cup. Coffee stain on the desk. Angela called again 2 weeks later. The DA investigation is expanding, she said. They're looking at Meridian's entire acquisition strategy, pattern of targeting military families, elderly owners, anyone going through grief or transition. Your case broke it open. I hung up and sat at Maria's desk. The 1984 ledger was still on the table where I'd left it. March 3, 1984. Mrs. Kowalski, oil change and filter. $20.50. Cash. First entry in 40 years of honest work. The shop was mine now. 100%. The filing cabinets holding her ledgers would stay exactly where they were. Her purple pens in the cup. Her coffee stain on the desk. Maria's 1984 ledger. March 3rd. Mrs. Kowalski. $20.50. First entry of 40 years. Still true. If you're rooting for me, show it with a like and a comment. The DA's investigation took 6 months to complete. Brandon's trial was still pending when I stood in the shop office where Maria's desk still held her coffee-stained adding machine and purple Papermate pen. Criminal charges were moving forward, but I'd already won what mattered. Maria's name was cleared. Isabel came in on Saturday mornings now, like she had since the trial ended. She'd mastered Maria's system, checking each column 3 times before moving on, catching herself making coffee and forgetting to drink it. The purple Papermate pens in the cup were the same brand Maria used since 1984. I bought new ones when the old ones ran out, kept the cup full like she always did. Danny and the union commissioned a brass plaque for the entrance. Russo and Kellerman Auto Repair, Est. 1984. Built on trust, maintained with integrity. The engraved letters caught the morning light. Permanent. Something Brandon's lawyers couldn't argue against or twist into something it wasn't. I finally sorted through Maria's home office last week. A letter sat in her desk drawer, my name on the envelope in her handwriting. The paper was dated 3 days before her final hospitalization. My hand shook as I opened it. I kept everything organized for you. 3-way verification. Check the pink copies. Love, M.I. sat at her desk holding that letter. 40 years of documentation wasn't paranoia. It was love. She'd known her work would defend itself when she couldn't. Pete used to say we were building trust, not just cars. Maria kept 40 years of receipts. She understood. The shop opens at 7. I'll be there at 6:30, like always. The ledgers are current. The books balance. Maria would approve.